presentation from the town center, the commercial core, from the people that put it all together, so you can understand what's going on there. And Ralph, I turn it all over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and committee, thanks for your time. What I'd like to do today, in just about 10 or 15 minutes, is share with you a little bit of the history of what we've been going through.
Introduce who's speaking, please.
Absolutely, my apology. Ralph Dawes, 108 Davis Drive, Barnegat, New Jersey, Chairman of the Planning Board, Chairman of the Master Plan Subcommittee. Okay? And just more or less close out the project. And I'll give you a little background in terms of what we've done with the master plan, how it evolved into defining the town center and the commercial core. I want to share with you some of the specifics in terms of the area impacted, the benefits associated with it. And then at the end, we'll ask that the township committee then take on the leadership either through the economic development committee or some other commission that you designate to kind of take advantage of what we now are bringing to the board. So before I do that, because I could say that this project has had a long history of from June 2005 is when we first started to embark on updating and actually rewriting the master plan for Barnegat Township. The master plan for Barnegat Township hadn't been really updated or revised since 1978. So you're with a master plan that designated, that supported a township of about 2,500 people. And today we have, what, about 23,000 to 24,000 people?
21,638.
Thank you, Mr. Billy.
2010.
Oh, yes.
In 2010, that doesn't include the building we've had across the way. So,
No, that's the
but in any event, the point to be made here is that there's been significant growth, and what we really haven't done is taken a more serious look at the master plan, which defines more or less a direction on how you're going to support the now town of Barnegat. The demographics have obviously changed. West of the Parkway, age-restricted areas were just a thought back then. The developments that we've had with the families here and the building of the schools, all just somebody's dream. So what we wanted to do was take some time, work with the state, get the approval, and update our plan. Actually, we rewrote it with new vision statement and associated documentation. So that master plan set the stage for us, allowed us then to build the town center, request to the state to designate a town center for Barnegat, which has some very significant advantages from a commercial perspective and economic development, as well as a commercial core. Those are the two items I'm going to focus on this evening. The list over there gives you the dates and the milestones of when things took place, beginning in June 2005. So if you're having trouble sleeping tonight, you want to take something like that home, feel free. But before I go and we get into the presentation, I want to give recognition to people who have been involved over the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years. And I had to write them down because there's been many people involved. Ken Matthews, Tony Altameri, Debbie Spadell, Jerry Harper, Danielle Novak, Sarah Winchester, Bill Williamson, Frank Pesci, Dorothy Ryan, Cynthia Ron, and Stacy Daniels. So I just want to thank those of you that are here, and public record, thank those folks who weren't able to come to see the fruition of their work. So we can go to the first chart. So the background, though, from 2011 to current, what we did is we updated the master plan, as I said, and we solicited the support for a town center designation. And that's important because that'll give you some benefits that other towns don't have and advantages over items like grants and building land use requirements. The state considered it and put it on an agenda December 7th. We worked closely with Peter Vandekoy, who I'll introduce in a bit. And then we got the approval for the town center and commercial core in 2012 of May. And we've now been working with the state and satisfying all the follow-up action items, ordinances and the like that need to get done in order to support what's been defined in the master plan and required by the town center. The goals, I think I alluded to them briefly, but quickly, in order to develop commercially, you need to make the area attractive for commercial use, and that means increasing some spaces for impervious soil and buildings. So we want to be able to give the builder or developer an opportunity to put a a footprint on the property that'll actually pay him back and encourage folks to come to Barnegat. Obviously, once you do that, then our tax can increase because you get builders who want to come here, they increase the ratables and our tax rate, and I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out the math on that, but it helps us. And the master plan in its core defines design standards by areas. So we were very sensitive when we put together the master plan to recognize the heritage of Barnegat. And what we wanted to do was make sure that that stayed in the design standards. And so we wouldn't have arbitrary, minimal kind of requirements on developers that would put up buildings that would be eyesores and not consistent with the overall theme that we want to portray in Barnegat. And then the plan does go into defining what are certain things that the township would want, permitted use, some things that the township would not want. Nuclear waste disposal, things, not as dramatic as that, but you want to be clear when you start to define these ordinances of what can and can't be in a particular zone. And we spent a lot of time going through those criteria. So out of that body of work, working with Peter and his organization that has changed from time to time, but he stayed with us over the course of the master plan and the designations of the town center. We defined certain ordinances that supported the town center, that were unique to the town center, and those that were unique to the commercial core. So what I'm going to ask Peter to do is to take us through a map. Now I apologize, these will be maps that will not be easily read by, even on the projection screen. They're available in the planning office, but they'll give you an idea of what area is being considered, the changes that are being considered in those areas, and then we'll talk a little bit more towards the end about the benefits of having that change in zoning. Peter, I'll take over the controls.
Hi.
It's the Peter, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce you. Peter Vanderkoy, and I don't have the list of credentials here, but maybe you could introduce yourself so that people in the audience as well as the community.
Yeah, could you maybe use the microphone? Maybe that
Yeah,
might be-
absolutely.
I didn't need the microphone?
No, you did too, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Hi, I'm Peter Vandenpoint from CME Associates. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I've been working with Ralph and quite a few other people over the past 10 years or so on the master plan, all the planning documents that were associated with it, as well as working toward plan endorsement, which was achieved December 7, 2011. And now we're in the phase that comes after that, which is essentially planning and implementation agreement phase, where you actually are able to utilize the town center and commercial core that was conferred, hopefully bring in, attract new commercial ratables, essentially qualify for additional grants and funding and various other benefits that designation provides. The map to my right here is...
Standing right in front of the side of the...
I'm sorry, I'll go as far as I can.
Yeah, but we have to go. I think we won't be able to see.
Sorry.
Go under the table with a mic. More mic.
We're flying out together on Thursday.
That
There we
was
go.
fixed, eh? That's why you're the engineer.
So the map to my right it's essentially just a zoomed in view of the existing zoning map. It shows a view of the town center area, and just to orient everyone, the CN zone, which is shown to my eyes in somewhat of a whiter light blue, that's where we are right now. And if you were to continue east down Bay Avenue, you come to the intersection with Route 9. Then if you travel north and south, it extends to the north, almost to the town boundary. To the south, it ends just before, I'm not sure if a good cross street for reference, but several hundred feet south of the intersection with Route 9. And the ordinances that Ralph referenced, essentially, the way that this was implemented is the state confers the town center, which enables you to get more development, more impervious coverage, relaxed standards, especially for the CAFR area that we're in, the Coastal Area Facility Review Act area. And the way that's what's delegated from the state to the municipality. At the municipal level, it's up to the town to actually enact ordinances to take advantage of those benefits of increased impervious coverage and those kinds of things. And what was done was a set of overlay zones. And the the way that's been implemented is through the C-PHD zone, the CN, and the CV zones. Those were the ordinances that were enacted as overlays, and those ordinances, they're known by the same name, they just have a town center prefix onto them. And what that means for those overlay zones is essentially where the town center overlaps any of those zones that I mentioned, you can actually take advantage of the benefits that were conferred by the state. Where it does not, you'd have the same that you had before. It would just be as it was in the past. One thing I wanted to point out, in the CV zone, the historic district, which is navy blue, might be difficult to see, but essentially Barnegat Township's historic district has been excluded from the ordinances of the town center. And the reason for that is that the ordinances, they do encourage more intensive development. It would change the character of that area. So in order to keep it historic, it was thought to be best, especially in keeping with historic preservation guidelines, to not confer those benefits in that area.
No?
No.
I know. Well, you know, I'm not the engineer.
Thank you, Ralph, that was a good question.
Any questions? I got it.
Okay. And this slide, I think some of these points have already been addressed, but it's essentially a town center is an area that's targeted for growth. And one of the things that was negotiated with the state, because it is essentially a negotiation process in determining the boundaries, is that within the center, that area would be targeted for growth. Outside the center, you'd have maybe an increased effort to get preservation, conservation, to protect the environment, especially in like the PW zone, for instance. So it is an area targeted for growth, and this map is just a preliminary draft version of what's essentially a type of land use map. The purple areas are actually vacant properties, and the red areas, just for instance, and I won't spend too much time because we have a few more slides. The red areas are areas that where the buildings or whatever facilities exist, there is just a minimal amount of impervious coverage, and they have much more of a potential to have additional development on those sites. This is a zoomed in view of the northern portion of the town center. And this is the southern section, which is by far the larger portion. And just to orient ourselves again, the municipal building is up in this area here. And essentially this is the historic district, is right in this area here. And this is the Gunning River Road redevelopment area. This is an image of the commercial core, same type of mapping, just showing the different types of land use designations. The main difference between the commercial core and the town center is that the town center is geared toward mixed use, primarily commercial, but also you can have some residential in there. Commercial core is intended to be targeted specifically for commercial uses. And the commercial core actually permits up to 80% impervious coverage, whereas the town center only permits up to 70%, so it's actually a more intensive zone. With regard to benefits and opportunities, you have permitted a wider range of commercial land uses. As I stated, the impervious coverage benefits 70% in the town center and 80% in the commercial core. With regard to impervious coverage, you can, of course, if you have additional development potential on your property, it does raise property values. It's more attractive to developers because they have more design options. They can actually get a greater yield for the property. And it also makes, for properties that are falling into disrepair, the potential for renovation and also tear down and rebuilds higher. And not just because of the impervious coverage, you can also have a significant advantage in grants and funding applications for those properties. And as a segue into this slide, this is essentially what this slide pertains to. You have, for businesses, they can actually get some advantages in terms of direct applications to the state for grants and funding. The town can actually have an indirect benefit in the area where when it submits applications for grants and funding, it gets additional points. That can improve the streets, improve the streetscape. That makes the area more attractive to business. And here we have a couple examples of before and afters. And essentially one of the primary principles behind the town center and commercial core is to not just develop it more intensely, but also make it just nicer looking and better operationally. In the top right photo, you have a parking lot with no defined curb, and really this is a kind of an antiquated way to design. It's just a sea of asphalt that doesn't look very nice. And one of the principles in the town center commercial core is to bring that development up to the street. Maybe have some on-street parking where it makes sense, but primarily actually put the parking on the side and in the rear yards so that you have a nice, consistent streetscape as you look down the street. And that's really what you have in both photos on the right. This image on the top and the bottom is top's before, bottom obviously is after. The main difference though, since I just went through the streetscape, the thing I wanted to point out here is these are one-story commercial buildings. On the bottom you see that they're two-story. And the significance of that is, where you don't have a lot of impervious coverage permitted, your limiting factor is often parking. You can only make your building as big as you can get the parking spaces for. And with increased impervious coverage, you can obviously cover a higher percentage of the land at more parking. So instead of getting a one-story building, you can actually get a two-story building. And if they're designed appropriately, it can be a huge benefit to the district. And this sort of bringing it all together is showing a streetscape and development brought to the street frontage. You can see there's some on-street parking. Presumably there would be parking at the rear on the side of these buildings. And this is not proposed for Barnegat because obviously the site over here might be a bit much, but this is just an example to show how the street could look overall.
Al, this is a test.
Yes, I want to know who the gingerbread man is.
Here's another example of mixed-use development. We just wanted to throw in there.
Just making sure they're paying.
Exactly.
There you go.
And with regard to potential additional measures to encourage development, there are potential considerations for tax abatement incentives. And you could have a local tax abatement program. Criteria really could be up to the township. From what I understand, the time frames, there may be some constraints there, but you could set up a tax abatement program in areas where it would be beneficial. There's a CAFRA forested area transfer of development rights, or the CFA TDR program. That's a potential program. This just to sum it up, essentially, if you're going to develop in the CAFRA area, you have to preserve a certain amount of forested area on your site. Since the town center is targeted for growth, there's kind of a conflicting, those are conflicting principles in that area. So one potential program that the township could pursue with DEP is to have an area outside of the center, essentially as a land bank. And if you want to develop in the center, you could put your forested area there, or preserve a large environmentally constrained area, provide additional benefits because of the contiguous nature and the overall environmental benefits out there. And you could develop the areas in the center more intensively. And finally, this slide and the next slide pertain to services and resources for small businesses. You could potentially establish a small business resource center or leverage a center that's located in the county. There are programs that have been enacted in many different towns to encourage local shopping and attract visitors from outside the township. There's potential for the appointment of a township employee on a part-time basis to act as a business advocate. And there's also potential to create a special section of the township's website to essentially highlight the benefits of coming to Barnegat, shopping in Barnegat, establishing your business there, and also promoting local businesses. Resources, of course, the township's number listed at the top, as well as at CME, John Hess and myself are always accessible. We know the backgrounds, obviously. Having been involved in the intimate details, I mean, if anyone has any questions about a specific piece of property, its zoning constraints, I'd be happy to speak with them.
The one thing.
And that's all I have.
Yeah. Thanks. It's just the one thing I want to make a point of to the committee as well as to the public is that the fact that we have this all in place. We talked about grants and things of that sort. The state works on a point system, is the way I understand it, correct?
Correct.
So by nature of us having put the effort and the funding, frankly, over the last several years of getting these artifacts put in place, gives us extra points towards the grants. So we would be put at a higher part at the top of the list as opposed to a township, say for Lacey, for example, that is now trying to designate a town center. And it's probably a 3 or 4 year process. So if 2 people went up, equal kind of requirements and seeking a grant, filled out the application, The application coming from our township, because of the work we've done with the state, would be give a higher priority and more likely that that person would get the grant.
Correct.
Right? So I guess we could just open it up, Mr. Mayor, for any questions. I know we've overran the 15 minutes. I apologize for that.
That's okay. It's an important issue. Is there anybody out there who'd like to speak or have any questions? Jackson?
Oh, hold on, I gotta turn this on.
Rose Jackson, 12 Marblehead Place. You talked about having guidelines for how the design of these new business developments would be. Now, is that sort of just a generic kind of guidelines, or are you specifically saying that maybe every shopping mall, a little strip mall, has to be designed in a colonial architecture, they must all have brick buildings, or is it just saying, well, everybody has to have a sidewalk and a curb and that?
Yes, okay. So it's pretty specific. The design standards actually, we have pictures. So we'll have the type of cornucopia. What is it, cornucopia? Right? That's a word, right? Cornices. Cornices. That's what I was
Cornucopia is the thing you have on Thanksgiving with the fruit.
That is right.
Well, I don't know if
Time of
that's,
year.
is that what you're going to have? in
Well,
the
that's what we're going to
town?
have, but in addition to that, well, we have definition of the architecture, and in certain sections of the town recommending the era of the architecture that we would expect it to be. What we try to do with the town center is phase it so that each of these zones would have requirements that were specific, that would show like a phasing in and a phasing back out of the town. So yeah, to answer your question, it's pretty specific, not constraining, but I think in a way that it's specific enough where our developer can pick it up and get a great idea of what we would expect, and not vague to where they can, put like a cinder block building and a sidewalk out there.
Because I've been in communities where they do have consistent planning or design structures so that every time you went into a strip mall or a shopping center, they all had a very similar architecture. And I'm really saying specifically, they, I'm not an architect, but, having specifically colonial or traditional, and I think, just from my own perspective, that really adds a lot of value to the town, and it
Yes.
makes it look like a really nice community that people would want to go to.
I agree, and that's what we
Okay,
did.
good, thank you. My second question is, the master plan group, do you have a lawyer or an attorney assigned to that group
Yes,
as you
we
were
do.
meeting? And who was that, sir?
Mike, oh my God.
McKenna.
McKenna. Mike
And
McKenna.
he's also the lawyer for the planning board?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Matt? It's on this subject, Matty?
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt Labrador, 108 Rio Boulevard. The question on this subject and with the master plan, do you know when the construction will be starting, or is it just like you're just explaining how it could look, or
Yes.
are you gonna be starting construction?
I wish I had the money to start construction, but it's development. What this does is provide the framework for developers who come in, and every application will have a unique timeline tied to it. This doesn't imply that any construction is beginning.
Okay, so you're saying from town center is from Georgetown to where town? Is that
Barnegat Boulevard, actually.
huh?
Yeah, it's Barnegat Boulevard.
To Barnegat Boulevard to Georgetown? Is that the?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to do your job.
No, that's good. No problem. Garage door man.
Yes. I think everybody up there can vouch for me. Wayne Pulaski, 709 South Main Street. Is there any plan to make developers aware of this designation?
Yes.
I mean, everybody in this room knows, and a couple dozen people around town know, but that does no good if there's no plan to make them aware that,
Yeah.
that these options are available.
Absolutely. So part of the EDC, I think, is going to look, we're going to look to the EDC to help get the communication out.
I'm a member of the
Absolutely.
EDC too.
Right. So we need to get to the
Clarify.
property owners. We have lists of all the property owners. And we want to work with the realtor community here because I think that's another viable channel. And I know you guys are going to have a meeting on Thursday, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So I'd like to stop by and maybe we can talk some more about how we can get that done.
you're more than welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Like I said, my concern was just that this is all great stuff that's happening
Yeah.
and all important stuff.
Yep.
But if nobody knows about it,
Yeah, see,
the greatest plan.
and so I got, you know, and just so, if you indulge me, we got it to a point where we are, and now I really need help to get the word out, and, you know, through the organizations, the township organizations, and other community vehicles, to get the message out to people who can now help operationalize the plan that we put in place.
Great, thank you.
Okay, man, thank you.
Tyson, you had your hand up, right?
Oh, he's not allowed to ask a question.
He had his hand up.
You have the proper.
Anyone else out there?
Please.
Yeah, Mary Ann.
Mary Ann Clementi, 565 East Bay. Basically, my question is, I had no, CME, is that a new firm? Brand new firm?
It is in town, as far as a consultant, it's been around since 1983.
Oh, because I know, I saw John Hess's name on
Yes.
that. So he's now associated with that?
That's correct.
From Birdsville?
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And you are a design firm, right?
We do, it's full-service engineering, planning, survey. We don't, it's not
Not an
Not
architectural.
architecture, no, yeah.
And are you paid to do this by us right now, or are you just
Let me answer the
coming
question.
to us?
So, yeah, the planning board has contracted with CME as we go out for RFP every year. And part of the RFP for this year, we included in the budget dollars so that we can work with an engineering specialist and professional that could help us write the ordinances, create the design and vision that we wanted in the master plan, and then work with the state at the level of technical detail that we felt we needed to have. Because I can't, right? I don't think anybody on my board is competent in that area. So yes, CME is working under contract for the township.
Mayor,
And you went out to bid on that, right?
let me follow up on that with respect to the questions that Mrs. Clementi's posing. With respect to the planning board work, there's usually two funding sources regarding that. Number one, if the planning board work has to do anything with an applicant, then that applicant is responsible for placing funds in escrow, and that applicant will pay for that work, the review work, the inspection work. In regards to the town center designation, since this is a direct benefit to the Township of Barnegat, and the Township of Barnegat has engaged CME, ultimately the Township of Barnegat will be financially responsible for paying any and all invoices submitted.
No, I think it's long coming. I mean, because you're right, going back to the 70s with this master
right?
plans,
Yeah.
crazy. And everybody kept talking about the master plan, nothing's being done. So I'm very happy to see it happening now. But I just want to make sure that the finances are done properly.
We have a budget. Dave's been very clear on what I'm allowed to spend, and I think we're under budget at this point. And
Okay.
that's why, one of the reasons I
And
came
also the
forward.
bidding process and the
Absolutely.
vetting process of the firms that we're using.
I want to make it clear that according to New Jersey state law, local purchasing law, that professionals do not go out for competitive bid. However, they are subject to the RFP process, request for proposals, in which cost is not the only consideration in awarding the
I
bid.
agree.
Thank you.
I don't think that,
Okay.
I agree that cost shouldn't always be the consideration. But that's why I said, and the vetting process.
As far as I
So,
know. Yes,
all right.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Anyone else out there? If not,